Okay, and just like I did with previous topics, Mohr circle and all, before showing the slides, we will ourselves discuss some of the main important topics. I will not, because I don't, through slides I can quickly go through concepts such as what is anticline, what is syncline, what is antiform, synform. I think most of you are already aware about these things, so I believe it will be, I would say, it's not that I will not cover those topics, but it will be waste of time. Like if we keep discussing what is an antiform, what is a synform. If you have doubts or questions, you are definitely, you can ask them. As nothing is like, I don't think anything to be a stupid question. So, but there are some topics which I think are maybe a little tricky to understand for everyone. So we will try to cover those in these lectures before we move on to the slide pack. Okay, everyone's good. Everyone can hear me out. Everyone can hear me, right? Yes. So yeah, thank you for reminding recording. I actually started in my computer, but I'll start the recording again. Okay. Okay. Then everyone good. Have you attempted that exercise which I uploaded, I think day before yesterday or yesterday? Yeah, yesterday. I'll upload the solutions, don't worry. And I uploaded previous videos also from StereoNet. I think that is remaining because that was still processing yesterday night. But other videos I have already shared from brittle failure criterion and stress strain relationships. Those slides as well as lectures, they are already uploaded. So now we move on to folds. I think you are already aware of what folds exactly are. Let me zoom it in. Yeah, I think this is too big. So this is today's topic. We'll start. I will quickly move to through like first. Let's discuss a little bit of basics so that everyone is on the same page. Uh, if you have a fold, you know different parts of a fold, right? So you should be aware of these. Is like everyone aware of all these concepts? I'll go through them. Don't worry. But I'm just asking if you are aware of these terms. I think most of you would have heard about these terms, even if you even if you don't remember what exactly, or you don't understand what each of these mean. So these are the main things that you should know. These are very basic. I mean, some things such as what is culmination, what is crest, trough, all these things also we will discuss when we discuss slide back. But for our discussion today, you should be aware of these terms. Okay, and the difference between, let's say, first we will discuss this part so that when we move to these, you can understand this. First of all, what is the difference between cylindrical and non-cylindrical folds? And before we move to that, let's discuss something about, we will discuss this also. So what is the difference between cylindrical and non-cylindrical folds? Hinge line is straight and curved. I would say that is not the basic definition, that would be like a consequence of it rather. Mhm. Yeah, actually defining a fold axis in non-cylindrical folds is a little bit tricky. I don't know even if you can do it all even. So cylindrical folds, they may not even have complete cylindrical shape, but the basic definition is that you have a straight line, and you can move this straight line parallel to itself to generate the fold surface. So formal definition will see in slide back. So you can move this straight line parallel to itself to generate a fold surface. For example, if you fold your notebook, it will be sort of a cylindrical fold. For example, if let's say this is your fold, and example of a straight line could be, let's say, a pencil. Okay, so you can actually move this pencil parallel to itself to generate this fold surface. So you can move it in this direction and then move it down, so you will generate the fold surface like this. So this is a very basic definition, and this actually line is parallel to the, or sometimes this is itself called the fold axis. Okay, what about non-cylindrical folds? These cannot be by moving a moving straight line parallel to itself. So this is the very basic definition of cylindrical versus non-cylindrical folds. Okay, so this you take it as the first point. Okay, oh, no, sorry. The second point of difference, or this is not again second point of difference, it is consequence of first point only, is that the shape of the fold along all cross sections which are, so these cross sections which are parallel to each other is same. So this is the shape across all cross sections which are parallel to each other is same. I'll show you here. The shape changes actually I should write across, not along, because we are more going from one section to another. So shape changes even across cross sections which are parallel to one another. So these definitions you have to understand. So first point of difference was you have a straight line which you in case of the cylindrical fold, which you can move parallel to itself. So this, that is why this, if you draw this surface like this, even though it doesn't look like a cylinder, but you have these straight line which you can move parallel to itself to generate this fold surface. Maybe if this previous figure is not clear, you can move it across the entire surface and it will give you the surface. So these types of folds are known as cylindrical folds. Now second point of difference for both these cases was that shape of a cylindrical fold will remain constant if you move a cross section parallel to itself, whereas for a cylindrical fold it will change. I'll give you this definition. Okay, I'll demonstrate this. So how does this work? Let's say you have these kinds of folds. First, let me give you an example. If I have a fold like this and I take two cross sections, let's say first cross section is sort of like going along length, and this second cross section is like this. So will the shape of this, how will the shape appear across these two cross sections? Will it be same or different? Not a, this is not a trick question. Across this cross section, will the shape be same or different? No, it will be different, right? Across one, it will appear just like, if you look at across this yellow one, you will just see these straight lines. So, right, along yellow one, you will just see fold like this. Okay, I'll erase this. So the fold will appear something like this. Whereas across red section, fold will appear in proper shape like this. Correct? Everyone agrees with this? Okay, so if there are internal layers, again I'm writing this, if there are internal layers also. Okay, so this will how it will appear across these two sections. So we are not saying like across any section the shape will remain same, but what we're trying to say is, if you have, let's say, more than one of these red sections and you move it parallel to itself in this direction to say some different location, do you get this point? Or you move the yellow one parallel to itself, so the shape will remain. We're not saying the position or all those things, but for example, here you move this red one parallel to itself. What will happen to the shape? It will remain same. Okay, I'll draw try to draw a nicer figure here. So if you have a fault and you take many cross sections, let's say, which are all parallel to one another, they have to be parallel to across all these, let's say 1 2 3. Across these three cross sections the shape will remain same. Maybe it will appear something like this. Okay, does everyone understand this? So the shape will still be like this only across all cross sections. Everyone agrees with this thing? So if you have like folds which are, this is, I drew just one fold. Normally, for example, many of you would have seen that tin sheet on rooftops, something like this, correct? So what type of folds are these? Cylindrical or non-cylindrical? Correct. So these are all cylindrical folds. So this is an example of cylindrical fold. You can take any cross section, the shape will remain same. You can cut it anywhere. All of these will fit with one another. Okay, so these are examples of cylindrical folds. Now everyone has seen an egg tray. Even if you don't eat eggs, I think you would have still seen it, right? So how does it look? Yeah, so there are some domes, but they do not coincide with one another. Maybe here you have this something like this. This, not this. Maybe this goes up. So that you can place your egg and then it is supported on the side. So it they do not coincide. Are they like this, like the tin sheet that we had drawn? They're not like that. Okay, so otherwise you will not have this space for keeping eggs. So somewhere it will be like this, and then maybe it goes back to being like this, so that you can place your eggs here somehow. Okay, so this is how it will look. So if you take a cross section across an egg tray, the shape will not remain constant. And in this type of figure, you see, you can, if you have a single line, you can move parallel to itself to generate this fold surface. Whereas if you try to place a pencil inside an egg tray, you cannot move the pencil to generate the shape of an egg tray. So if you take different cross sections along this, the shape will change. So this is an example of non-cylindrical folds. Okay, and in our lecture from here, we will mostly be, for today we will be concentrating only on cylindrical folds, because these are, I think, this is a simplified description of folds and they are easier to describe. For non-cylindrical folds, you'll study mostly, for example, those interference patterns, superposed folding. Many times these will become non-cylindrical. So for today, don't, I think, do not over concern yourself with non-cylindrical folds. We'll be dealing with cylindrical folds. Okay, any questions in this part? Okay, then if there are no questions, now what is fold axis? Basically this line that you are moving parallel to itself here, these yellow lines here, we can, like, usually we'll place it here at the hinge and we call it the fold axis. Okay, so this is basically the fold axis. We'll see all these formal definitions. I'll give you slide back, don't worry about that. But if you are making any notes, just try to just note the important points for today's lecture. Okay, what is a hinge point? Everyone knows what is a hinge point. Before defining hinge point, okay, yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So before defining hinge point, we have to define curvature. What is curvature? I'll give you overall, like, qualitative idea. We will not go into the proper mathematical definition, but what is curvature? Where slope is zero. Okay, I'll give you two lines for, okay, so you're saying where slope is zero. Okay, where, which is the point of maximum curvature on this line? I'll give you 2 points, this red one and this yellow one. Call this at A and B. Where is maximum curvature? Where do you see maximum curvature? Red one, correct. So you see red one, you see maximum curvature. What is the slope at red one? If you draw a tangent and you draw a tangent at B, so what is the slope at red point? What is the slope at point B? And at red point? No, 90 degrees theta. What is slope? Slope is tan theta. What is the slope? What is definition of slope? Slope is delta y by delta x. Okay, so delta y can be any value here. Delta x is always 0 if this is vertical. So delta y by 0. What should be the slope? See, it is not changing in x directions. Yeah, so anyway, tan 90 degrees infinite. You should remember that. So this actually is infinite here. So slope being 0 is not, so here you don't see actually any curvature at point B, even though slope is 0. So slope being 0 is not how you define curvature. Curvature is independent, it will not depend on slope. So what other definition can we use for? There are many actually which we can use, but most intuitive one, which definition we can use for to define curvature?
The amount by which a curve deviates from being a straight line or a plane.
Yes, correct. So that is sort of like uh, I would say good definition of how will you define. But let me ask, how will you actually define that thing, that how much it is deviating from straight line? Is there a way you can define that?
Finding the angle between the tangent of the curve and the line given.
Okay, so that is tangent of the line given. So tangent will always be parallel to line at that particular point. Okay, so one way, if you have studied calculus, for example, to determine slope, how do you determine slope in calculus? You take first derivative. Okay, if you look at the derivative here, so I will not go into mathematical definition, I'll just tell you how this works. So if you look at the slope here and look at the slope on other side, okay, so first derivative defines the slope and the second derivative will define, so sort of like derivative of first derivative of the slope, so how fast the slope is changing. So you see the slope here went from negative to positive across this point. So one way to define curvature is to define second derivative. If second derivative is very high, your curvature is very high. But there is another definition, for example, the one which you used in sedimentology also, to define when we were using, let's say, the sphericity of the grains. Let's say I will not even put these axes. I don't remember if it was sphericity or angle. Uh, let's say you have something like this, okay, and then it becomes a straight line here. I will draw it as almost a straight line. So how can you define curvature? I'll tell you guys, is at any point you try to inscribe a circle. Okay, so that's sort of like again second order approximation. So a tangent is always a linear approximation at a point. Okay, so this is a linear approximation. You think now try to do a second order approximation, we will try to inscribe a circle here. Okay, so you will be able to inscribe a shorter circle. If the same thing becomes, let's say, more gentler like this, you will be able to inscribe a bigger circle here. Do you understand this? So it's just like at any particular point you try to inscribe a circle that is passing through that point. Okay, okay, so that normally you see mathematically this will be part of second order approximation. You see in curve there are, these are square terms. Okay, x square y square, this is a linear approximation at that point. Again, actually this is not even exactly second order approximation, but we will try to draw a tangent on second degree rather than first degree. So this will be xy. Okay, y equal mx plus c. So these powers are all one. So you just try to inscribe a circle at a given point. Let's say this point you want to find the curvature. So it's sort of drawing a tangential circle at this point. Okay, so do you get this? So that curvature of this circle and curvature of this yellow line at this point becomes same. So that is how we are trying to draw. So for a line, what is a tangent? So at a tangent means that the slope of the line and slope of this yellow line becomes same and they are touching each other. Similarly here, this is slope is changing, so curvature of this circle and curvature of this yellow line, it is same at this point. So you try to inscribe such a circle. Everyone gets this point? And if it keeps becoming gentler, let's say in next case it becomes even gentle, so you get, you want to define curvature at this point, it becomes something like this. Everyone gets this point? See what we are trying to do. If you have, let's say, to make the point more clear, I'll have something which is even sharper. So if you try to describe a circle here, it will be something like this. Okay, you cannot describe such a big circle here. Can you inscribe this big circle here which is tangential? No, it will intersect the lines. Okay, is it understood or should I repeat again? So for tangential surface, so then that I was saying, like, hoping you can intuitively imagine this. But usually how what we will try to do is, for example, when we draw this tangent, okay, so let's say you have any curve, this yellow curve, okay, so it will have its own linear relationship y equals fx. Okay, so what we do is we take first derivative, it will be equal to f dash x. Okay, and what we do in case of tangent is, when we draw this tangent at this point, y equals mx plus c, so we make this point m is the slope, correct, in linear equation. So we make this equal to this value. Okay, all right. So this is when we draw this line. Next, in next case, we are trying to draw what? We are trying to draw a circle. Okay, so what we do for if we, what will be the first derivative of this y dash? So that is why we are taking equals. What will be the first derivative? The dy by dx, it will be equal to, just differentiate this part, right hand side, it will be equal to m, right, slope. So that is why m becomes equal to this f dash x. In case of circle, how do we do this? What is the equation? So y square plus x square equals, let's say I'm writing for unit circle, usually it will be, as we studied in Mohr circle, x minus a plus y minus b square equals r square. So actually we will differentiate it two times, this equation. So this equation we will differentiate it two times, and here y equals fx, right? So this is some function. So this fold surface is some function of curve. Then we take y dash x equals f dash x, and then we take y double dash equals f double dash x. Okay, and then, so this is how we will draw a circle here, because for a circle, curvature everywhere is same. Okay, for that is the definition of a circle. Curvature will not change from place to place. If you have, for example, a parabola, curvature is changing from one point to another, but for a circle it will always remain same. So once you double differentiate it to x minus a plus, again you do, actually we'll have to take it on other side. So what you do is you take this side on another side, so there will be, it will give you the second derivative, and then you can use that second derivative to get this equation of circle. Okay, so what that will give you is, so after you take the second derivative, that this radius terms, you will need a bigger radius for this second derivative to be equal to the second derivative that you get on this side. I'll not do it because it will take a lot of time and it is not very, I would say, relevant for your exam preparation. But if you are interested, this is actually how geology should be done. Everyone, I think, we usually ignore the mathematical part of it, but that is like one of the more r square. Then you will have to, actually x should have been taken there, but yeah, we, so you can, I think if you are comfortable with calculus, it will be very easy. You just take that side, and then you will just have to take first dy by dx, and then so this actually will cancel, and then because here it is all in x terms and this is also x, and second thing that you'll have to do is take d2y by dx square, and then this will give you second derivative. You calculate the second derivative at this point, equate what this will come out to be, equate both these 2 points, and that will give you a circle for this curvature. For a second derivative, what should be the radius? So you will get the relationship between radius at that point, and it will depend again on this line. So if you had a function of this line, then we could have discussed it, but here we don't have, so it will only be in these variable terms, so it will be slightly difficult to understand. But yeah, this is how we get a circle, and the gentler the surface is, the bigger this circle is. So that is why I was not going into calculus, because I thought this will be more intuitive for you. So even if like just that is why I gave this example. Here you see, if you want to inscribe a circle, it has to be a very small circle. You cannot inscribe a bigger circle here. Do you understand this now? Okay. Okay. So here you cannot inscribe a bigger circle. What will happen? It is not tangential anymore to this point. Okay. So what is the relationship between radius of circle and curvature? Yes. So yes. So if you can inscribe, for example, if you have a circle here, so it is inversely proportional to this radius of curvature. So you will see is inversely proportional to this radius of the circle. So bigger the, so this is how, if you solve this, you should get a relation somewhat like this second derivative. Okay. So curvature is inversely proportional to this radius of circle. Okay. Now what we'll do is 1 over r. So let's say, what is the radius if I have a completely straight line? Okay. If I have a straight line, what is the radius of circle that I can inscribe here?
infinite.
Correct? It will be infinite, because if you take uh, the second derivative of this curve, what will be the second derivative for this line? Any line, even if it is a straight line like this, any other angle, a second derivative for a straight line is always 0. Correct? Because y dash will be equal to m is a constant, you take second derivative, it will become 0. Okay. So for if you do the same things, if you try to take the second derivative of the circle, you'll see curvature for a circle, it will be 1 by r. So r has to be infinity to make the curvature same as curvature of this line over here. So if your fold has a straight part, curvature is equal to 0, which means radius will be equal to infinity. So you need an infinite. So if you have a circle which is infinite, at a particular point it will appear as a straight line. So a circle with infinite radius will have 0 curvature at any given point. Understood? Now let me give you some other example. What about this point? What will be the radius of the circle that you can inscribe at this particular point? Which one? Yeah, over here. Yeah, yeah, I get your point. You cannot actually draw a tangent at this particular point, because there is no derivative. So derivative, this sort of function is not differentiable at this particular point. But yeah, so let's not go into mathematics, but just try to understand that here, if you have to intuitively see what is the radius of the circle that you can inscribe here. Yes, so the radius should be, actually first you define radius will be 0. Yeah, and curvature equal to infinite. Mathematically speaking, curvature is not even defined here. So it cannot be defined, because to define curvature mathematically, it has to be differentiable at this point, but this function is not differentiable at this point. Okay. So curvature, we just say it is almost infinite at this point, because your slope is suddenly changing at one particular point. So there is no distance that it has to cover. It is not changing slowly from positive slope to negative slope, but it is changing suddenly. Okay. So this is how you define curvature. Now we go back to our original figure here. So if you have to, you see, inscribe a circle here, you can inscribe a smaller circle at this particular point. And if you want to inscribe a circle, you'll you will inscribe a bigger circle somehow. Okay. So I'll erase this. So where do you see more curvature? Because of okay, let me draw that again. So smaller radius. So this is how you define curvature. So this is smaller radius, r is small, here r is probably bigger. So higher curvature, and here you see less curvature. Okay, so definition of hinge point. So this is what we were discussing originally. What is the definition of hinge point now? I will go into this cleaner area. Yes, so this is how you define. So point of, so don't say just select its slope, it's actually the second derivative. So hinge point is point of maximum curvature. So there is actually a difference between definitions of this hinge point and we will say fold axial, we'll say fold axis. So hinge points, if you join many of these hinge points, so for a cylindrical fold you'll get a straight line. So if you go in 3 dimensions, so let's say you have this hinge point, you go to another section, you'll get another hinge point, another hinge point. So it'll be like this fold surface will be something like this. So it will keep on going. So there'll be these many hinge points. You join all these hinge points together, what will you get? Hinge line. No, not yet, not yet. You'll get hinge line. So fold axis definition is slightly different. Fold axis actually will be the same if this cylindrical fold is there. So yes, you will get fold axis because we are assuming these folds to be cylindrical. Okay, so you just you join these points and this will give you the hinge line. So, and what if you join multiple hinge lines together? What will you get? Yes, correct. So for general folds, it will be axial surface. But if let's say you have cylindrical folds, or I'm not sure, like even if it is, it does not have to be planar. It can go something like this. So your fold could be, I would say, keep changing its location of this maximum curvature. So you'll get sort of tilted or curved surface. So you call it axial surface. If it is plane, you call it axial plane. So hinge line you will get by joining multiple hinge points on the same surface. Okay, similarly, what about next we come to axial surface. This you will get joining by joining multiple what hinge lines across different fold surfaces. Now so you will have, now let's say there is a green surface here and then there is this blue surface here. Okay, so you join these multiple hinge lines together, this case, so this will give you axial surface. Okay, so by joining multiple hinge lines you get axial surface across different fold surfaces. This is important. So you have to say points on same surface across, because these are also hinge points, right? So these are all hinge points. So for hinge line you have to be on same fold surface. Here you'll have to, or the move across fold surfaces, okay, from one to another. So this is important. So this is axial surface. So you understand these terms. This is clear, okay, how you get from hinge point you go to hinge line, and then finally you get axial surface. Now what is an inflection point? Yes, so the point at which the fold, let's say it is changes its behavior, or what will happen to the curvature at that point in many cases. Yes, so sense of curvature will change at that inflection point. So if I draw a fold surface like this, so somewhere here, so these are hinge points. I'll draw it again so that it's clear. Yes. Okay. So these are our hinge points. Okay. So you see maximum curvature here. What is happening to the curvature slowly and slowly as you're moving away? It is changing. Okay. So it is becoming smaller and smaller. So if we take actually second derivative, so we have almost a straight line here, because I find it slightly difficult to draw. Yeah, maybe this demonstrated, it's demonstrated better. So you already know what are these hinge points. So I will draw them. So this is one of the hinge points, and this is another hinge point. Okay. So what is happening to curvature slowly and slowly? So as you are moving away from this hinge point, what is happening to curvature? Curvature is increasing or decreasing? So similarly, what is happening as I'm moving on this side? Curvature is increasing or decreasing? Let me draw it on other side. So is a curvature is decreasing. So if I move opposite to it, what it means? Curvature is increasing or decreasing? Correct, increasing. Okay, so when we start from this point, let's say we start from point 1 and we want to go to point 2. So when we start from point 1, curvature is decreasing, but near this point you see curvature is increasing. So at some point there should have been a change where from decreasing sense it went to this increasing sense. So that point actually, and what should be that point when it goes from negative to positive? That's actually the, so from decreasing, so second derivative here will be negative, correct? So then it goes to curvature is increasing. Okay, the slope. So what will happen? This point is known as point of inflection. Above this point, yeah, inflection point, or you can call it inflection point. So point of, so this inflection point, you see, before this curvature is decreasing, after this curvature is increasing. So sense of curvature changes across this inflection point, and you'll see that curvature exactly at the inflection point. What should be the curvature? So curvature should be 0 at that particular point. Okay. So here actually you'll see that if you compute second derivative, so it will cross the 0 point over here, and here if you can actually, you'll see you can there'll be some tangent here, which is, it almost becomes straight line. So curvature almost becomes 0. Okay, except like in some, yeah, it's in circular folds it may not be the case, but yeah, it's the thing is curvature will become 0. The sense of curvature will change. So from one point, if you're going to this point, so curvature is decreasing, then curvature is increasing. So everyone now understands what is this inflection point. And you'll see we will use these points to define domain and all those things of course they are not important for today's lecture, we'll discuss them later. But main thing that I want you to understand from today's lecture is about this hinge line, or this hinge line and the axial surface. Only thing that I missed here is, if this axial surface is planar, what do we call it? We just call it axial plane. And this is what we'll be discussing further in the lecture, axial plane. So everyone is clear with this, what is hinge line and axial surface? Okay. Where is, so, and where is hinge line present? Hinge line is present on the axial surface, right? It cannot go out of the axial surface, because axial surface you will actually get by joining hinge lines. So for any fold, remember hinge line is always in axial. If it axial plane is there, hinge line is always in axial plane. Okay, you understand this? Because we'll now move on to this sort of figure here. Everyone would have seen this figure, right? Think you're all aware of this. Okay, so before we move on to this, I want to you guys to understand something before we move on to this part. Okay, let's hide this first. Let's say I have this plane right here. This plane I've got. Okay, so can I place a line on this plane? I can place a line, right? I can draw a line on this plane, any line, correct? If this is a plane, I can draw a line like this. I can draw a line like this. Make these a little thicker. I can draw a line which is like this. And draw even a black line, something like this. Okay. I can draw infinite number of lines on this plane. So all these lines, do you think which I've drawn, they have same plunge or different plunge? And what about trends also? They have same trend or different trend? All are the condition is all these lines are on this plane. Different trend but same plunge. Okay. Any other take? Different trend, same plunge. Okay. Can I draw strike line on this plane? Is it a line? If I draw a strike line, will it be on this plane? Yes or no? Let's say this is my strike line. I can draw a strike, right? Correct? What is the plunge of a strike line? If someone asks you this question, what is the plunge of a strike line? Correct. It has to be zero, because a strike line, yes, a strike line is just how if a horizontal plane will intersect it. So, and what about this line? This, let's say I give you this particular line, this blue line right here. Does it have zero plunge or no? No. Okay. So all of them can have different plunge and different trends. Okay. Different plunge, different trends, all are possible, no problem with that. Now you'll see why I'm showing you this thing. Just checking which of these is dip angle for the plane, alpha or theta. Yeah, this is where you people will commit mistake. So, yeah, so 90 minus alpha is theta. So dip angle is always measured with respect to horizontal. So if this is theta, this alternate angle will also be theta. So this is the dip angle. This is 90-degree minus dip. Alpha is 90-degree minus dip. Okay, now you have this information. So I have given you these lines. I can draw infinite number of lines on this plane. Now I ask you, what is the range of plunge and what is the range of trend directions? So range means between what values it can vary. Okay. Trend will be 0 to 180 degrees. Okay. Someone said 0 to 9. No. For this, someone said 0 to 90 degrees. Okay. Any other takes? 0 to one of you. Okay. Okay. And any other, what is that angle of trend? 0 to 180 degree. Any other takes on this? Actually, it will depend on this fold, which direction that fold is in. Okay. So I get your point. Variation will be 0 to 180 degree. Actually, it can be x to 180 degree plus x. Okay. Yes. So in this part, actually, I think it's good that many of you already understand this concept, but some of you also said like 0 to 90 degree. Yeah, the range of plunge is only from 0 to theta. So you cannot have a line on this fold surface which is plunging more than this theta value. So this is a important point which all of you, if you did not know this before, so this is something that you should remember, that it can vary only between 0 to theta. It cannot vary from 0 to 90 degrees. For example, if you have a horizontal plane, if you have the top of your table, and if you put a pencil on it, no matter how you rotate this pencil, it will still be horizontal, because theta for a horizontal plane is 0 degree, and your plunge of a line that is contained in a plane, that will vary from 0 degree to theta degree, theta, and which will be 0 degree to 0 degree in this case. Okay, so no matter how you rotate your pencil on tabletop, it will still be horizontal. If you have an inclined surface on the other hand, and this is sort of what you did in true dip and apparent dip, so when it is parallel to this strike line, it is horizontal, theta is 0. When it is perpendicular to strike line, that is when you get this maximum plunge. And for folds, it will be actually dip. So it's sort of like plunge of a line, it's sort of like varying between, it's like apparent dip, it will vary between 0 degree to theta. Okay, so when it is 90 degree, you will get maximum dip or maximum plunge, which is equal to theta. Okay, similarly, if you have, if for any other line which is between these perpendicular to here, your plunge will be less than theta and more than 0 degree. So for this line, red line here, this top one, plunge is 0 degree. Similarly, if you have a plane which is vertical completely, something like this, so you can have a line which is horizontal. You can try this yourself also. Hold your notebook vertically. So you hold your notebook vertically, so you can see, you can draw a horizontal line, as well as you can move your pencil so that it is plunging vertically down. So because for a vertical plane, this theta equals 90 degrees, so your plunge will vary between 0 degrees to 90 degrees. Correct? Everyone understands this concept, or should I repeat again? Okay, so overall concept you understand. First of all, I'm saying not the understanding, but just remembering this thing. If you have a plane, so I'll write it here. First, remember this thing. If you have a plane with dip equals theta, okay, it means that if you have any line that is contained within this plane, okay, you have any line that is contained within this plane, what we are trying to find is between what values can the plunge vary. So we are trying to find this point. So we know that we have a plane with dip theta. Any line that is contained, there is any line that is contained, by what values can the plunge vary? Okay. If we don't have this condition, that this condition right here, that any line, that line is contained within the given plane, then you know plunge varies from 0 degree to 90 degrees. For a vertical line it is 90 degree, for a horizontal line it is 0 degrees. Now answer for this is between what values it will vary. You know this plane is with theta, so plunge will only vary between 0 degrees to theta. Okay, so how do you get this? First, everyone understands this part, or you have any question in this part itself if you don't understand? Because after this you can just do it with imagination also. Everyone understands this part? Okay, everyone understands this part. So now this, if you understand this, then the second part becomes easier. So if you have a plane, any plane, okay, so plunge of a line, for example, if you have a line like this which is parallel to strike line, what will be the dip of this line or plunge of this line? Strike line plunge will be equal 0 degrees. Okay, correct. So this line has to be in the plane, means along any particular direction it has to be parallel to the plane. Okay, so it is just like measuring that apparent dip that you are calculating. Okay, so let me draw a line which is perpendicular to the strike line. Okay, what is the plunge of this line? So plunge 90 degree means with, so you, first of all, plunge has to be measured within vertical plane. You cannot measure it in a given plane. It has to be measured in this vertical plane. Okay, sort of like what you see here. Okay, so what is the value? So you'll measure it with this line. It has to be measured. So what is this? Is the plunge. Plunge will be equal to theta because it is vertical. Okay. Now from this position you can go to some other value over here, or some other value which is sort of like, if you move it, if you go from this strike direction to this direction which is perpendicular to it, so your theta, so your plunge will increase from along this path. So you going from point 1 to point 2, orientation from 1 to 2. So what will happen, plunge will increase on going from 1 to 2. Plunge increases from 0 degree to theta. Let's say there is third position here. Now it moves to this third position. I should have drawn it a little bigger, but yeah. So this is third position. What is theta at third position? sorry, plunge at third position. So you go to third position, so it is theta here, and then it will again go back to 0 degree. Correct, it will again become parallel to the strike line, so it will go from 0 degree to theta, again back to 0 degree. This is the case when it is parallel to strike of the plane which contains the line. Theta is, what is theta? Perpendicular to strike of the plane or along the dip of the plane. Again this becomes parallel to strike. And if you are still wondering why it will never go to 0, just imagine this part. You have this plane, and then can this plane contain a vertical line? Vertical line will be like this. Can you put a vertical line on this plane? Horizontal you can put, even if, can you put it? You cannot put it because it will no longer be in the plane. So it will always vary between 0 degree and theta. But if you have a plane which is vertical, let's say this is vertical plane, can you put a horizontal line in this vertical plane?
Yes.
Horizontal line can have different trends. So this is like right here, and you can put a horizontal line, and then you can also put a vertical line. Okay, so this is the main concept that you have to understand, that it will, or between what values can the plunge vary. If so, the plunge of the line can vary between 0 degrees and theta. Okay, yes.
What will be the value between point 2 and point 3 if we draw any line on the plane?
So what might be the value? So that will be just like how you calculate apparent dip. It will be between 0 degree and theta. It will depend on trend of the line which you are drawing. Okay, it will vary with the trend, and you can use the same calculations that you used to calculate that apparent dip, because apparent dip also you define with this line that you calculate. Okay, so again it will be between 0 degree and theta here. So it will again dip. It is, I cannot directly answer the question that because it will depend on the trend. Okay, what trend you are looking at, but you can solve this problem just like you did with true dip and apparent dip, in the sense that you have these two lines, and you can just say this is at 0, this is, if it is dipping, let's say if this is h, this is 0, it is dipping in this direction, and my distance between them is x. Okay, and then you have to calculate, let's say this is 90 degrees angle, and let's say you are saying it goes, so we were coming from here to here, and then we, let's say, go back to some position between this was our 1, 2 and 3, and you are in some position like this. So it will depend on this angle between these two values. So you can take like build, let's say I take this as angle beta. I don't know, so because I don't remember the formula for this, so I always do it like this only. So this is beta, this is x, so you can calculate what this thing will be, this direction. So what will this value be? This line. So how will you calculate this? So base, so you know this value is x, so x over this, let me call this as x prime. I'll write this as x prime. I'll erase x here. This is how we already solved this. So this is x, so this is x prime, this long length, so this is x prime, so x prime, x over, so this is x over x prime is equal to what? Cos beta. So I'll just calculate x prime equals x over cos beta, and now I know in my vertical plane this is h, this is x over cos beta, and then I can, so this is my apparent plunge, just like you have apparent dip. This is my, actually this will be not apparent plunge, this will be actual plunge, but it will be equal to apparent dip, and then we can just solve it for this theta, which is a apparent dip. So I'll just do tan theta equals h over x cos beta, and I'll just put these values here. So if you will have to know what this h is. Either you know the true dip, then you can replace this h with something. So just like we calculate apparent dip, this is how this problem will be solved. But it will vary between somewhere. It will depend on this value of, that is why I say it will depend on trend, this beta value, okay, which is this orientation of this with respect to this vertical line. Okay, so you follow the same calculation that we did in true dip apparent dip calculations. Okay. Yes. No, plunge can never be more than 90 degree. No, it can never be more than 90 degree. Plunge. So you will change the trend. For example, let's say I'm looking at the plane in the screen and I'm drawing lines like this. So your angle keeps on increasing. I understand your what you are trying to say, that if we keep increasing angle like this, and then let's say line becomes like this, and you say angle, why is my angle not 120 degrees for this final case? I'll draw this. So no, we do not do this. What we'll do is, initially it was trend direction was this. We'll say the trend has changed. So we'll say this trend goes here, and we always measure this acute angle. That is, if the trend has changed this, so we'll measure this to be the plunge. Okay, do you get it now? So plunge cannot be more than 90 degrees. Because trend has changed. On this side, trend is this way. Whereas when it crosses this 90-degree line, so the trend will change direction. So we'll say the trend has changed, but we will always give this, let's say on this yellow, so this side trend is in this direction. Do you get it now? Okay. So this is an important concept, and this will also answer like some, if you ever had this question, why do we have this triangle, why don't we have this complete, why don't we have a square in this case? So again, remember, axial plane will contain the hinge line. Okay, so when we do this classification of folds based on dip of axial surface and plunge of hinge line, so this is what we will be looking at. So we have this axial surface which is containing the hinge line. Okay, so the hinge line can be in any orientation, just like we looked in the previous case. So this is your axial surface or axial plane, we call it in this case, because we are talking about the dip will remain same only if it is a plane. If it is a curved surface, dip will not change, dip will change. So dip of axial surface, or you can say plane here. So then you take and you look at this and this hinge line that is contained. So you see axial surface is itself generated by connecting different hinge lines. So hinge line will always be present in this axial surface. So first let me ask you, like, if you already understand some of these concepts. Where do we have space? Let's go down. Yeah, you have a fold like this. You have a fold such as this. Okay, and let's say you have a fold this is the same fold, but you tilt it just like you had in this direction. So it is tilted like this, going like this. Okay, so which of these is a horizontal fold? Let me give you only two examples. Which of these is a horizontal fold? Second one. Okay. Okay. Which of these is a vertical fold? So most of you said, okay, I'll write this third, fourth. This is a vertical fold, you say. Okay. Let me give another example over here, so that you just tilt it in this direction so that this fold becomes something like this. Okay. So this is saying, so this is a vertical fold, saying, uh, and this you say is a horizontal fold. Okay, let me tell you something, and I'll draw this another case here. I'll just erase these numbers. Just like this, you have a fold like this, something like this. Okay, so that this is non-plunging hinge. Okay, so let me tell you something, and let me ask you something else. Which of these is an upright fold? Let me renumber this. Now tell me. Okay, so let me color this in green so that you get this one. This is yellow, and let me color this in blue. So upright is 1 and 4. Okay, and let me draw another example so that you have something which is plunging. Now let's say this as this seventh example. Any which category will it fit in, or none of the above? We can say. If you, so you can actually draw it in 3 dimensions. Also, I have drawn it like intersection. Yes, okay. So I can, this is actually a plunging fold. Only thing is I can actually define this thing here. So I can draw this fold completely, but it is going below the surface. I'm drawing only this top part. So as to show this is plunging. So some one of you saying this is also upright. So you say all these are upright. Okay. So how can you actually define orientation of these types of folds, different kinds of folds? We'll cover this to, yeah, how will you define the orientation of these different types of folds? What is varying? And the plunge. So let me draw plunge hinge lines. So first let me draw the axial planes in all these cases. So axial plane in first case is something like this. Okay, correct. What is the axial plane in this case? I'll say you'll see what are the correct answers later on. But I see you got confused where most people get confused. This is, I'm drawing the axial plane in these cases. All 4 and 1 are basically same. I just, there was no need to draw this. Okay. This is a little difficult to draw. Okay. And now sixth one is a little tricky to imagine. All right. So these are the axial surfaces for all these kinds of planes. Okay, and now let's draw the hinge lines. So this is the hinge line. I'll make it thicker. So these are the things that we'll be tracking. We will be tracking two things in these all these cases. We'll be looking at first of all dip of axial surface. We are not interested in orientation in north south geographic coordinates, north south east west. So we are not looking at strike or trend. And second thing is plunge of hinge line. And let me write it in yellow because I've drawn this in yellow. So the second thing that will be tracking is plunge of hinge line. Okay, these are the two things we'll be tracking. So you have to focus on this only. So these are not all the possible examples. This is just to show you how we visualize these things. First of all, what is dip of axial surface in the first case? In the second case, in third case, between between 0 to 90. Let's say it's inclined. It's not 0, it is slightly inclined if you look at this way. Between 0 and 90 degrees. Okay, it is not vertical, it is not inclined. What about this one? Again, yeah, we have already drawn this and the same one. It is 90 degree. What about this one? 90 degree. What about this one? This is again between 0 and 90 degree inclined. Okay. What about this one? Correct, 90 degree. So you see, the first thing that we have tracked is we have different cases of this axial plane which is varying between 0 degree and 90 degree. In some cases it is 0 degree, in some cases it is 90 degrees. Okay. Now we look at the plunge. What is the plunge? What is the plunge here?
Zero.
What is the plunge here?
Zero.
What is the plunge in this part? Plunge. This is I'm saying non-plunging. Again, it is 0 degrees. Correct. What is the plunge in this here? This is same as the previous case, 0 degree. What is the plunge in this case? In case number 5.
Zero.
Plunge. Look at this yellow line. So it is 90 degree. It is dipping vertically down. What about this case? It is again between. What about this case? So you see there are different combinations of these plunge values. Okay, correct. So you see you can have an axial surface which is dipping 90 degree. Okay, so this is dipping 90 degree. You can have a plunge. So this axial surface is also dipping 90 degree. So 90 is possible, 0 90 is possible, and 90 and some value, let's say theta, is also possible between 0 and 90. So in these three cases, look at this case. In all these cases, axial surfaces, what is the dip of axial surface in all these cases? And this is the third one. All these one in green. They are all, look at these values in blue. They are all 90 degrees. Correct? Here it is 90 in this case. Here also. So in all these green points we have axial surfaces 90. What is happening to the plunge of the hinge line? So it is varying from 0 to 90 degrees. Okay. Look at this particular fold. What is the dip of this axial surface or axial plane?
Zero.
0 degree. What is this hinge line?
Zero.
Okay, so just like we drew for this axial surface, when the axial surface was vertical, we drew these lines which were all which were varying from. So in these cases, let me color this also. In these cases that you see here, you see all these axial surfaces vertical. I don't know, it's getting a little slow. Yeah. So in all these cases, this axial surface is vertical. You see these cases, and this one particular axial surface is all vertical, but dip can vary between 0 degree and 90 degree. So you have something which is 0 degree, you have something which is 90 degree, and you have something which is in the middle. But if you have, let's say I give you dip of axial surface, your axial surface is horizontal. So this is your axial surface which is horizontal. So what is the range of hinge line? Can hinge line, what is the value? So for vertical axial surface, you saw hinge could vary between 0 degree to 90 degrees. What is the value along which hinge can vary in this case? So can you have this plunge which is non-zero, this yellow line, if axial surface is dipping with 0 degrees? Okay, how can you get that line? You draw any hinge line on this plane, it's always 0 degree.
Axial surface contains the hinge line.
Yes, so axial surface, if it is dipping 0 degrees, so if axial surface is dipping by theta, if because first of all, axial surface contains hinge line, correct? What is dip of axial? If dip of axial surface is theta, what is the minimum plunge and maximum plunge possible? Minimum is 0, maximum is theta. Correct. So it can vary between 0 and theta. So if your dip of axial surface is horizontal, if axial surface is horizontal, say if axial surface is horizontal, what is theta? Okay, so theta is 0. So what is maximum plunge possible? So minimum plunge is 0 degree, max this is always 0 degree, no matter what. So what is theta here? 0 degree. So you cannot have a hinge line which is not horizontal. So if your axial surface is horizontal, then you can have a hinge line which is, you can practice, only orientation of fold will change. You can say this is my axial surface and my hinge line is something like this. So only thing that will change is this fold will still be horizontal only thing, its trend will change. It's just like your notebook is lying on the table. So if your notebook is lying on the table, this is this sort of situation, right? Everyone agrees, this situation. If you move your notebook, axial plane is still horizontal, and you'll see that hinge line will also be horizontal. Where your notebook closes, that is the sort of the hinge line, that will still be horizontal no matter how you rotate it on the table. Second case that we saw is if dip of axial surface is, again we have is, or we have already, dip of axial surface is theta. So equals if theta equals 90 degree for axial surface, what is minimum plunge and what is maximum plunge? 90 degrees. And you have seen all these three cases here that we just drew in the previous figure. So you see axial surface, all these green clouds. So you see 90 degree, 0 degree, 90 degree, 90 degree, and 90 degree, and some theta value. So this is the only thing that will be keep tracking on. And third case, you have to just consider these three cases. So first case, so start with always axial surface. So first case theta is 0 degree, second case theta is 90 degree, and just consider third case. So 0 in third case, I'll use this color, 0 degree is less than theta is less than 90 degree. So theta is somewhere between 0 and 90 degree. So what is minimum plunge in this case? And what is maximum plunge? So theta not 90. Again, it should be theta because we are not going to 90 degrees. So this will depend on this theta value. Okay. If you understand these three, you can understand that whole figure. Everything revolves around this. Okay. For example, in this case, what will be this kind of fold if you have 0 degree? What will be the kind of fold when it is theta and somewhere in the middle? Sorry. Yeah. So if you understand this, going back to that figure will not be a difficult task. You will understand why there is only one side to that figure also. I don't know where I placed it. It is too cluttered. Yes. Yeah, and let me tell you, so this year's gate, you would have, many of you would have done this question incorrect. So all of you said, which one of these is horizontal fold? You said this is horizontal fold, right? Actually, you are not wrong, but usually this type of fold is considered horizontal fold. This is horizontal fold. This is also horizontal fold. Many of you will think this is vertical fold, right? This is not a horizontal. This is not a vertical fold. This is a horizontal fold. This is also horizontal fold. This is also horizontal fold. It appears horizontal. Yes. Yes. So we call it, we will understand there is some intersection, not always same, but there is some intersection where they can be both. Okay, what is actually the name of this kind of fold? We don't call it horizontal fold. And this question was asked in this year's gate examination. What is the name for this kind of fold? This is recumbent fold. So although recumbent fold is a type of horizontal fold only, but if you someone asks you, is this a horizontal fold? You can, it is actually, I'll call it recumbent. So this is recumbent fold. Okay. This is a horizontal fold. This is also horizontal fold. Yes, you are asking something. Correct. So, yes, correct. So you, yes, correct. So in all these cases, it will be horizontal fold. But if it is upright, we will prefer to call it upright rather than horizontal. But all these cases for horizontal, you see in all these top three cases, they are non-plunging. So you'll call them horizontal folds. And if it is like lying on the ground, where axial surface is horizontal, you do not call it horizontal fold. You call it a recumbent fold. Okay. So you see in all these cases, plunge is 0 degrees. And when we'll go back to that figure, yeah, this figure now right here, see what is written here. So this will answer your question. What is written in this part? Horizontal upright. Actually, all these folds that you'll see here, they are all upright. Sorry, this is dip of axial surface there. These are all horizontal and all these are upright across this line. Okay. So in this part, yellow part, they both intersect. So it can be upright as well as horizontal. So for to define an upright fold, so how do we define an upright fold? What is the definition of upright fold? Based on what we have here. So usually it will not be exactly, we won't say like exactly 90 degree. We have a slight range, 80 to 90 degree we'll say. Okay. Or 60 to 80, all these things. So first of all, before going into that thing, first thing you look at is dip of axial surface, this thing right here. Okay. So if dip of axial surface, what is the dip of axial surface at this point? This point, 30 degrees. So I'll just write dip of axial surface as axial AS is axial surface equals theta equals 30 degree. So theta is in this case 30 degree. So between what values can the plunge vary? Plunge will vary between 0 to 30 degrees. So that is why you see it stops here. So between here, if you read plunge here, so it varies from 10 degree to 30 degrees and it will stop here. It doesn't go beyond this. It is not possible. You cannot have plunge more than 30 degrees. So it can vary between 0 degree and 30 degree. So this is plunge is, what is the value of plunge here? 30 degrees. What is the value of dip here? Dip of axial surface. What is the value of dip of axial surface? Just read from the figure. So this special case where plunge as well as dip, they are both same. You see plunge can vary between 0 degree to 30 degree. If plunge is 0 degree, we call it a horizontal fold. And if plunge is if the dip of axial surface and plunge are same, this is a special kind of fold. What we call this fold, type of fold? We call it reclined. So as you see, if dip is theta and your plunge can vary between 0 degree to theta, and when plunge is also theta, this special kind of fold is known as reclined fold. Okay, this is a reclined fold. For others we have different definitions. Yes, along this line. Yes. So if you think of it that way, a recumbent fold is also a type of reclined fold, and a vertical fold is also a type of reclined fold, because for a vertical fold, so this is vertical fold. This is not an upright fold. A definition of vertical fold is plunge is 90 degrees. So you see, look at this plunge. We are drawing it in yellow. And this axial surface. So dip of axial surface theta is equal to 90 degree. Plunge is also 90 degree. So you see theta and plunge, they are same, so it has to be a reclined fold. Similarly, for this kind of fold, if dip of axial surface is 0, there is only one choice. So you see, there is just a single point. You cannot go in this direction. This is not allowed. So plunge has to be equal to 0 degree. There is no choice in this case. Whereas if you are 90 degree, if your dip of axial surface here is 90 degree, you have the complete range of choice. You can go from 0 degree, so your plunge can go from 0 degree to 90 degree along this line. Along this line, plunge can go from 0 degree to 90 degree. You have a choice here. You don't have a choice of plunge here. Your plunge has to be 0 degree. So if again theta and plunge, they are both same, so it is also a type of reclined fold only. So when you go from this point to this point, all the orientations, so how will you do is you move your notebook. So how you can imagine this? Place your notebook on the table. Okay, everyone can imagine this. Your notebook is on the table. This is a what type of fold? Recumbent fold. And this is the what is this line? Hinge line. Axial plane are your pages of your notebook. Let's say center page will be axial surface. What you do is you rotate this notebook along this. Okay, so that it goes to position like this. So what is happening? Your yellow line is going up as well as the axial surface is going up. So it goes to this sort of position, and your notebook now becomes, I don't know how to draw this, but so this becomes the hinge of the notebook, and your notebook goes something like this at this point. Actually, I'll draw first at that point. So this is still fixed. So then it becomes something like this. uh, so you just place it on table and you just move it up. Do you understand my point? So it can go from this position, finally you will move it to this position. Correct? So any position in between, any position of this notebook in between, that is a reclined fold. Do you understand this point? How we are doing this? Okay, so you just move your notebook from this position to finally this position, and any type of fold that you'll have in the middle, that will be a type of reclined fold. See this yellow line and that axial surface, you are moving with same amount. So you go this is a, so this is one way of turning your notebook. Another way of turning the same notebook, if you have this notebook like this, you can turn it in a different manner so that it becomes something like this. So that is sort of a different way. So what will be these folds? So these will all be reclined if you move your notebook like this. In first case. In second case, what type of folds will you get if you move your notebook like this? There are three ways you can rotate your notebook. So these folds will be in this case, second case. Yeah, these will all be horizontal. Your plunge is always horizontal. So these will always horizontal. So this is how you can move your knife. So and then you can have another way which is in between these, so that you can get inclined folds. So these are the main categories that you have to remember. So rest I think is self-explanatory in this. So along this line you have inclined, along this line vertical line you have upright. So these are all upright, these are all these are all upright folds, these are all horizontal folds. Recumbent is a special type of I would say horizontal fold, or a special type of reclined fold. Similarly, vertical fold is also reclined and a vertical fold is also upright. So this distinction should be very clear. But you see, this is also a horizontal fold. This is where people will mistake, we will commit mistake. For example, if someone gives you this kind of fold, what will you say? You will say this is not a horizontal fold, it is dipping and all that. But no, this is also a horizontal fold. Even this is a horizontal fold. This is a horizontal, this is a horizontal, this is a horizontal fold. And similarly, all these are upright folds. Vertical fold is a special kind of upright fold in which plunge as well as dip is 90 degree. So if someone asks you what kind of fold, what is the name that you will give to a reclined upright fold? Reclined upright fold. So reclined upright fold is vertical fold. Because upright means dip of axial surface is 90 degree, correct? What does reclined means? Plunge equals theta, means plunge equals 90 degree. So plunge is also 90 degree, dip of axial surface is 90 degree, that has to be a vertical fold. Now all these folds, they are upright, but they will be plunging upright in between. Okay, when plunge is non-zero. So it could be gently plunging. If it plunges between 0 degree and 30 degree, it could be moderately, or it could be steeply plunging. Similarly, for all these cases, they are all horizontal, means they are non-plunging. So you can call them either horizontal or non-plunging. So you can call it that steeply inclined non-plunging, moderately inclined non-plunging, gently inclined non-plunging, and in between you have plunging inclined. And you can give further names also. For example, what will you call this kind of fold?
Sir, can you please explain which one is non-plunging?
So all these folds here. So I will again make it clear. I will erase this stuff so that we can discuss on these things, because everything in this you can read. So what do you think, which of these will be non-plunging? Horizontal fold is non-plunging. So you see, how did we define horizontal fold? Horizontal fold is defined as a fold which is plunge is 0 degree. So all these are, so you can call these as horizontal. All these yellow line, all these are horizontal or non-plunging, correct? All these are non-plunging folds, because you see plunge of hinge line is here, it is varying between 0 degree to 10 degrees. So plunge is very less. You don't say like plunge has to be exactly 0 degree, but it is very less. So you call this horizontal, or you can call them non-plunging. Don't call them horizontal non-plunging because it is one or the same thing. Either call them horizontal or call them non-plunging. Anything that goes beyond this shaded yellow shaded area is plunging. Okay, I'll shade another area in this green part which is upright. So all these folds, they are upright. These are upright, and these are reclined. These are all upright. These are reclined. We have two end members here, particularly for which we have special name, vertical and recumbent. So recumbent is a type of reclined horizontal fold. So if someone asks you a question, what is a reclined horizontal fold? That is a recumbent fold. What is a reclined vertical upright fold? That is a vertical fold. Okay. Anything in between here is plunging inclined. So it is plunging as well as, so there is plunge as well as dip of axial surface is there, and plunge is not equal to dip of axial surface theta. So plunge in this case is not equal to theta. Here plunge equals to theta. You can see here, for example, 60 degree it reads 60 degree here, it reads 60 degree here. 30, 30. Correct. So this is the definition of reclined and upright and horizontal folds. In between you have this plunging inclined, and you can actually give them names. So what will you call this fold here, right here? So maybe I'll zoom it a little so that you can read this. Can you read this, what is written here? So this will be moderately plunging, steeply inclined. Correct.
Yes.
Similarly, this fold right here, this will be moderately inclined, gently plunging. This will be, this one will be steeply inclined, gently plunging. So you can give name for this. You just need to remember that every 30 degrees you have to mark. So if you have to write this in subjective paper, it is very easy. You just need to take these markings at 10 degree and 80 degrees. So 10 degrees, 80 degrees in this part. Okay. Similarly, 10 degrees, 80 degrees in this part, and in between you need 30 and 60. You just draw these lines, then you can automatically define. First define reclined, upright, horizontal, then you between this gently, moderately, steeply, similarly steeply, moderately, gently. It goes to 0 degree. Again, one thing to remember,
Sir, upright fold could be plunging as well.
upright fold could be plunging as well. Yes, correct. So all these folds along this green line, they are all upright, but you see they can be plunging along this green shaded area. They are all upright and they can be plunge. You see plunge is, if you erase here, plunge is non-zero. Look at the plunge here, it is non-zero. Understood? Now there is one thing that you have to remember when you draw this figure where you will get confused. Let me tell you. This plunge of hinge line, tell me what is the variation, from where does it go? It goes from 0 degrees to 90. But what is happening to this dip of axial surface? It is going from 90 degree to 0 degree. So this you remember, because sometimes you studied everything, and then when you go to the exam you start drawing figure and you start going like both sides. You draw a figure like this. Okay, 0 degree to 90 degree, and then you draw from 0 degree to 90 degree, and then you see, oh, I saw this was recumbent fold, but here I'm getting dip of axial surface to be 90 degree. So you'll get confused. So always remember, this goes from 0 to 90 degree, and this side will go from 90 degree to 0 degree. Correct? So it's reversed scale in horizontal direction. So we'll study these things, and I'll give these in slide also. But if you understand these concepts, it will be very easy to understand this figure. Many times I've seen students just cram this figure, what this looks like, they don't understand it. What I'll suggest is try to do these experiments. Try to move your notebook, place your notebook on table, and try to move it from, for example, a vertical position to a recumbent position, and then you'll see that all, when you move from this to this position, you'll get all of those as reclined folds. The reclined folds is the one where students have most difficulty in. imagining what is a reclined fold. So just to imagine it, and even in examination you have these sheets of paper which are folded. Just try to take the fold from a horizontal or from a recumbent position to a vertical position. How will you move? If you want to go from this upright plunging sorry, upright horizontal to vertical, then you will see all these plunging folds. So this is how you can imagine it. Okay, any other questions? So we will stop today's lecture here, because this is something which I wanted you to understand, because this is, I've seen like student will give you correct definitions also, in many cases they will tell you, but they don't always understand this kind of problem. Is it clear now? Yes. No, upright fold is not horizontal fold. So this, if you are talking about, if you say upright and horizontal fold, you'll see only in this area which are together. Horizontal fold has plunge 0 degree, whereas upright fold has dip of axial surface equal to 0 degree. Okay, so upright fold axial surface is always vertical. You see here axial surface is not vertical for this fold. So you see in all these cases axial surface is vertical, but plunge is changing. Plunge is zero, changing from 0 degree to 90 degree. So that is definition of upright fold. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, it will depend slightly on the question. Also, you'll have to understand in the situation. Sometimes these things can get tricky. I've seen in many cases they will, I mean, they will just not consider this as horizontal, and some cases they will consider it horizontal, non-horizontal. But I'll tell you, yes, if you can always challenge the questions later on. But when you have to mark a question, always mark upright horizontal fold as horizontal. This is also a type of horizontal fold. If someone asks you whether this is a horizontal fold or not, you will say yes, this is a type of horizontal fold. So if this is, because this is also upright. If someone asks you this is a horizontal fold, yes, this is a horizontal fold. If someone asks you whether this is a horizontal fold, you say yes, this is a horizontal fold. Although a better term we could be used for this is recumbent. So if you have to choose an option, yes, for all these three types, choose horizontal. That yes, it is correct. But if let's say you have a single correct answer type, and you are asked to choose only one of these as horizontal fold, then you will consider this as recumbent, choose this as horizontal fold. So it will depend slightly on the question. But if this time they are asking more than one correct answer, or whether they are asking if it is true or false, yes, this is a horizontal fold. This is also a horizontal fold. This is also a horizontal fold. Although we have a special term for this kind of horizontal fold, which is recumbent fold. Similarly, this is also an upright fold, and this vertical fold is also an upright fold. So you always assume this thing, and if in the correct answer it is not given, you can challenge the answer key. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Any other questions? Think it will be almost. Yes. What is overturned fold? Okay, so overturned fold will, it's not exactly related to this topic, but overturned fold, the simple definition is, if you have this, when we study anticline and syncline, then we'll understand this. So if any of the limbs of the fold, so you'll see this keeps on, the fold keeps on getting tighter. So if you move away, so this is the bottom and this is the top. So bottom is as the base and top is at the top. That is a normal fold. If this relationship gets reversed, that the top of the fold goes here and bottom goes here, that is an overturned fold. When will this happen? When, for example, if this axial surface it dips in this direction and your fold, this same fold, it becomes something like this. Let's say it becomes something like this. Now what is happening in this case? Let me draw these lines. This top one as yellow line. Let's say it has tilted like this. So yellow line is on top, okay, and red line should be base. So this is how these actually were deposited. Let's say it comes overturned, actually comes from sedimentary layers where younger layers are on top, older layers are at base. So you have this red line at base, which is older, which should be the base, and this should be the top. So in the first case, in the second case, this relationship is preserved. But if you look at this third case where it has got overturned, you see the yellow one should be the top, but if you go from here to here, yellow one is at, so this top was at and base, so top is now coming is under the base. So this is sort of, that is why we call it overturned. It got overturned. Do you understand it now? So your base, if you look at the base right here, but we'll study these when we come on later on. Base is above the top, which is sort of like an overturned situation. Okay. Okay then. So any other questions? It's not on YouTube, on course website. So you'll have to. I assume like everyone has registered on the course website. If not, please go to the website and register, and there you'll find these videos. Not on YouTube. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I will upload now for from SteerNet. So of previous ones, brittle failure criterion and all those I already uploaded. So today I will upload this one and the one from the SteerNets. Okay. All right, guys. I think it's almost 11 o'clock over there in India. So I will stop this recording first.